Hey guys, Dan here. Welcome to TV News and Reviews. This is the first episode, if you will, of this type of show here. I've been, reviewing different kind of TV stuff on the channel lately. Frasier Fridays with my buddy Joe. I started to do a couple of classic TV show reviews, and of course the Connors and Roseanne, which has been huge for my channel. Connors will be back for season 2, and I'll be reviewing all of those along with you. But I just sort of figured I'm going to probably be watching all of the fall shows anyway. I try to check out, at least for a little bit, all of the new shows every year. In fact, I fall a little behind. Usually I don't check them out till like January or February, just because I watch so many things that I fall a bit behind. But this year I thought, I would like to stay with it, and watch them as they show up. And I figured, what better way than to also share my reviews with you. And then there came some Connors news yesterday that I thought, oh, well, that'd be cool to talk about on the channel. So I sort of decided to blend it all into sort of a news and reviews amalgam, if you will. And I love movies, I really do, and every so often we'll still be doing movie reviews on the channel. But to be honest, my passion has always lied in television ever since I was a kid. So I thought that was probably a better way to go for the channel, just because, like I said, the Connors and Roseanne stuff has really been, doing well for the channel. So obviously it's more what you guys want as well. So that's awesome. Let's make it happen. So for this first episode of TV News and Reviews, I've got a couple of news bits for you. Like I said, there is something about the Connors. There's also something about the Muppets and Disney Plus in regards to the Muppets that I wanted to sort of share with you guys and talk about a little bit. And then I also have some things to review for you. Now, of course, the fall primetime shows aren't going to be starting for another couple of weeks, but we do have some shows that have already come out in the daytime section, I guess, if you will. So I want to talk about the Kelly Clarkson talk show, and I don't really do HGTV. I don't do a lot of reality anymore either, but there's this Brady Bunch house renovation that I want to talk about. This show, I think it's probably the first HGTV show I've watched in full ever. So I want to talk about that. And then the Dave Chappelle Netflix special has been, talked about for the last couple of weeks. A lot of opinions going on about that. So I did watch it a few days ago, and wanted to give my own review of that as well. So a few things to tackle, and like I said, as we get more into the fall premieres, I would like to take a look at some of that stuff, and we'll go over that more as the time arises. But let's get right into the news. So the thing about the Connors, we've got Katie Sagal, who appeared in one episode last season. We know her and love her from Married with Children and Futurama, and so many other things. Sons of Anarchy, which I've never seen, but I know she was very popular from that. But she's great, and she really made a great impression last season. She plays one of Dan's old classmates that has a crush on him. She works at the Casa Bonita, which is where Becky also works. And so it was revealed yesterday that moving forward in season 2, she will become a little bit of a recurring character. Maybe not in every episode, but they're certainly going to explore this relationship of hers and Dan's a little bit more. She wants some romance. He is not sure if he's ready to move on yet from Roseanne. So, a lot of things going on with that. I think that's going to be a really well-received plot line. I think we've mourned the loss of the Roseanne character for an entire season now, and not that there's ever a specific time frame, like, okay, well, you should move on now from grieving your deceased wife and your high school sweetheart and all of that. Obviously, it's a process, and so that's what they're doing with this character. What I like about what I read from the showrunners is that they're going to be taking it slow. And what it said to me is, that these guys are excited for more seasons of the Connors. So, I think their hope is that it will progress, and maybe in season 3 or 4 they'll end up getting together or something. So I was excited to hear about that. Now, apparently, she's also going to be the manager of the restaurant moving forward. So I guess that means she's going to be Becky's boss. So that is very interesting as well. So yeah, that's really all we know so far. But I am excited to see Katie Sagal back. I always love seeing her. She did a few episodes on Lost years ago. Whenever she pops up, I always enjoy it. So that should be exciting, and we'll see where that takes her. I believe they said in episode 3 or 4 is where she's going to first appear. So we won't see her quite right away in the first episode or 2 at least, but she will be appearing and become a recurring character. So that's very cool. So then Disney Plus. Now, I got my Disney Plus subscription already, and I had already sort of planned on doing a bunch of Disney Plus reviews here on the channel, just because I am doing the Dan Does Disney thing with Merlin, and we're reviewing like the classic movies going all the way back to Snow White. We've done a few of those so far, and we'll be continuing with those. We recorded one for Dumbo already that I'll be putting up at some point soon. But Disney Plus was running like a Labor Day weekend special where if you bought 3 years at a time, it was 33% discount or whatever. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna be all in on this Disney Plus anyway. I may as well get the discount. So I did that. It doesn't go live until November. But what's interesting is pretty much everything in 2019 that they're going to post is going to post on that day. I believe it's the 12th. So, everything for the remainder of the year, more or less. I think maybe there's like one movie that's going to come out in December. But for the most part, it's going to be all on that opening day. There's going to be a High School Musical TV show, but it's like more in the... It sounds like it's going to be more in the vein of like what BH 90210 is right now. Which is like a show within a show kind of thing. In this one, it seems that the kids are gonna... It takes place at a high school that's putting on High School Musical, so it's like behind the scenes of that. So that sounds interesting. And then there's a Christmas movie with Anna Kendrick coming out, and then the Lady and the Tramp movie, and then there's a Star Wars Mandalorian thing. So all that's going to premiere the same day. And I would like to tackle most of it here on the channel as well. So obviously, opening day, I can't do everything, but I do have my Disney Plus subscription. But anyway, so for the Muppets, it was sort of rumored that they were going to do a Muppets series that was going to be a sequel, basically, to the movie Muppets Take Manhattan, and sort of take place after those events. It was going to be called The Muppets Live Another Day, and it deals with Kermit bringing the Muppets back together after Rolf disappears and the band breaks up, and the group breaks up and all that. So that now has been shelved. It was going to be written and produced by Josh Gad and some of the people who did Once Upon a Time, and a pilot was in the works and everything, but that has been shelved. But there is supposedly some other Muppet show coming on. It's going to be called Muppets Now. Yeah. Which is, here's the description from the press release. It's an unscripted short-form series that Kermit announced at the Disney D23 Expo. So I'm not exactly sure what that even means. Unscripted short form. Short form to me means like 10 or 15 minutes, which I know they're doing some sort of show with Forky, the character from Toy Story 4. It's like an Ask Forky type segment. I know they're doing that, and that's supposed to be short as well. It's supposed to be like 10 minutes or something. So maybe that's what this is, a short form, unscripted. I'm not exactly sure what that means if it's a Muppets show, because obviously you have to have, work the puppets and stuff. But, I guess they have Miss Piggy go on The View and stuff, and that's basically unscripted or whatever. So I guess I get that. But, yeah, I'm not exactly sure what that means or what that will entail. Anything with the Muppets, I'm game for. I thought the movies that they did the last few years, the first one was really, really good with Jason Segel. Muppets Most Wanted was pretty good. I don't think it was quite up to par with Muppets with Jason Segel or some of the older movies, but I always love to see the Muppets. I really enjoyed that show they did like 2 or 3 seasons ago, where it was like behind the scenes of the Miss Piggy talk show. It was like a show within a show kind of thing. And it was certainly a more adult Muppets, I guess, kind of like Henson originally had created them to be. And I really liked that. It only lasted one season, and I think it was unfortunate because it took sort of half a season just to kind of find its footing and to sort of know what it was. Like, I do think the first maybe 5 or 6 episodes weren't all that strong, but I think, by the middle to the end of the season, I thought it was, kind of on fire and doing really, really well. I was laughing. So that was unfortunate. So, I don't know. I'm always up for anything that they want to do with the Muppets. But I was certainly intrigued when I first heard that they were going to do this sequel to Muppets Take Manhattan in a serial type show, probably 10 episodes or something like that. I thought that would have been really, really cool. I guess we're not going to get that now, or maybe we will sometime down the line. I don't know. But I'm glad that the Disney is not sort of shying away from doing Muppet stuff. And obviously they have the Muppet Babies now. I don't know if that's still in production, but there was, at least a couple of years ago, a Muppet Babies new version that they were running on, I guess, Disney Kids or something. It was for like 5-year-olds. It was for real little kids. But I caught an episode with my nephew, and I thought it was pretty good. Maybe not up to par with the original Muppet Babies, but we'll see. We'll see what that brings once Disney Plus, comes out. But yeah, I'm glad that they're still sort of embracing the Muppets. I mean, they bought into this huge and very, very creative franchise, so I'm glad they're utilizing some of that. Also, just as a sort of side note, I have not seen it myself yet, but my friend Merlin, who guests on the podcast a lot, has been watching the Dark Crystal thing on Netflix and says it's very, very good. He thinks Jim Henson would be proud, and said it was a really great cast. So, again, I haven't seen it, but he's really into that. So I definitely will have to check that out. He just told me that earlier today when I told him about the Muppets news. So, all right, so let's get to the reviews. That's the news portion. Now, the reviews. Okay, so first up is the Kelly Clarkson Show. Now, this is a daytime talk show starring, of course, the great Kelly Clarkson. She is one of my favorite people. I love her so much. I've seen her in concert, and I love watching interviews with her. She's just a friendly, bubbly person. You can tell she's having a great time. You can tell she's, really friendly. And I did not actually watch season 1 of American Idol. I caught on season 2, so I missed her entire, sort of career on American Idol. But I followed her music career since winning that show, and so I watched the first 2 episodes of the Kelly Clarkson Show. I decided it would be fair not just to give it, a one take, but to watch the first 2 episodes. And it's your typical daytime talk show. There's not that much that really sets it aside from a lot of the ones that are out there. I think it's most akin to like an Ellen, or the old Rosie O'Donnell show back in the 90s. More akin to that than it is to, I don't know, the Steve Wilkos Show or Maury, or it's celebrity focused, it's feel good focused, as you would expect, and so let's see. It airs here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, at 11 o'clock a.m. It's slated, I think, in most of the country around 2 p.m. leading into the Ellen Show, and it's on mostly NBC stations, but not all. But so, that's how you can kind of find it. I actually watched it on the NBC app, because I was working when it was on, so I saw my episodes that way. But in the first episode, it was Dwayne Johnson was the guest. It was supposed to be Kevin Hart originally, but of course he had his car accident just a week or 2 ago, so he's sort of out of commission. So his good buddy and Jumanji co-star Dwayne Johnson stepped up to the plate there. And then the second episode was a special guest appearance from Ellen herself, and she gave all the audience members TVs because she's Ellen. And then John Legend came on. So essentially, let me just run down, I guess, through the episodes and how they work. So in the premiere, well, first of all, she's going to sing a different number at the beginning of every show, which is something she started doing years ago on tour. She just did a different cover song every night, And I don't know if they were audience suggested or not. I think maybe they were. I think maybe you like would tweet her or something, and she would pick one. But so here she's going to pick a song every day, recommended by the audience, and she's got her touring band with her on the show, so easy to do. So she opened the first episode with 9 to 5 with like a video montage, and then the second episode she opened with the Jonas Brothers song "Sucker." And then at the end of the first episode, so it's like a video montage of her waking up, doing 9 to 5, and then she sings the second verse live in the studio audience. You know, she comes in and through the doors, everybody cheers. And then she has Steve Carell announce her, since he did the whole 40-year-old virgin thing, you know, where he's getting waxed. And, Kelly Clarkson. So he does that at the top of the show, which is, I mean, come on, that's pretty cool. You have to admit that. So, you know, everybody loves this girl, right? So the first, like, 12 to 14 minutes of the show is just her talking with the audience, talking about the making of that 9 to 5 video at the beginning of the show, talking to some of the audience members that were in that video, and the whole theme of episode 1 was working moms, so, you know, anybody from homemaker to, you know, a lawyer or whatever. So that was the whole studio audience was working moms, or working women. I come to think of it, maybe it wasn't working moms. I think it was working women. They weren't necessarily all mothers, I suppose. But so she interviewed some of them, and, you know, about what they do, just sort of human interest type stuff. So okay, and then she brings out Dwayne Johnson, and then they go to their first commercial, and then she did the same thing on the second show. You know, the first bit, instead of the 9 to 5 thing and chatting with the audience, was Ellen comes on and, you know, surprises Kelly, and then, you know, gives the audiences TVs, and then Kelly says, okay, well, here's our first guest, John Legend. So she introduces the guest, they come out, they chat for like 30 seconds with hellos, and then she goes to the first commercial break. So that's sort of how both episodes have gone so far. Comes back from the break, she talks to the guest for, you know, like maybe 10 or 12 minutes. It's 2 segments worth. And then we go away and do other things. So in the first episode, she did this segment called Rad Human, where they interviewed this lady who has a food pantry that was just shut down, and so the whole town got together and you know, pitched in to get her a new location, and then the Kelly Clarkson show gives $10,000, and it's all very nice. And then in the second episode, instead of that, they did a tram car thing with music teachers, and which Kelly reveals her mother is an old music teacher, so she brings out her mom after that. But first she talks to these music teachers and, you know, gives them all a trip on her new Carnival cruise line that's named after her and all this. So, and then at the end of it, she does this what I'm liking thing, where she finds somebody on, you know, Twitter or Instagram or social media somewhere, that's doing something cool or funny or interesting, and she sort of interviews them and talks to them. So that's, you know, kind of the basics of the talk show. You know, again, it's very akin to Ellen. It's very much like Ellen, and that's fine. You know, we did that a couple years ago when Harry Connick Jr. got his talk show, and, you know, the whole singing thing was part of his show, and Tony Danza years and years ago, you know, he was an old school dancer, so tap dancing, you know, factored into his show a lot. But so the bottom line is, this is replacing the Steve Harvey show, and I made it through maybe an episode and a half of that. Most of that was waiting for my car to get inspected, and it just happened to be on in the lobby, and there were other people there, so I wasn't going to change the channel, but that show was, like, awful. And I've seen, you know, a couple clips of it here and there online. Just bad. It's just not good. Steve Harvey is an acquired taste. I think he's okay on Family Feud. I know everybody loves him on Family Feud. I like him on Family Feud, but the whole thing with Family Feud is I hate that all the questions now are made up, and this isn't probably his fault, but, you know, all the questions are made up to be titillating and, you know, to give dirty answers, and then he gives them a look when they give a dirty answer, and it's like, that's what they were supposed to say. So all of that, like, you know, forget that. So this is so much better than the Steve Harvey show, let's just say that first and foremost. But I think her interviewing skills certainly need to be honed a little bit more. But look, you would expect that. This is her first foray into giving a talk show. I think she spoke a bit too fast when she was talking to Dwayne Johnson. I think she was, gushing a little too much, but not in a Jimmy Fallon way. Like, Jimmy Fallon is just like, oh my gosh. I mean, you could knock him over with a feather with each of these guests. He is so enamored by everybody, and then he laughs like a hyena all the time. I like Jimmy Fallon on SNL, and I do watch like the games that he plays and stuff with the guests, if they're on YouTube or whatever. But he's like the worst interviewer. So Kelly Clarkson is certainly not that bad. But she does gush a bit, and she tells her guests that she loves them all the time, and this and that. She told both Dwayne Johnson and John Legend at least a couple of times each that she loved them. And look, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what's nice is her laugh is genuine. Like, I don't know if Jimmy Fallon's is forced or not, but it seems like it to me. And I think she is genuine, and she's just a sweet girl. She's a very sweet Southern Texas girl, and she is, I think, it never stops being cool to her. Like how famous she is, or how, all the famous people she knows. And actually, she had, a really interesting question for Dwayne Johnson about that, about sort of, do you ever regret not being able to, walk into a shopping mall or walk into a restaurant without, being recognized? And that part of the interview I actually really enjoyed. I thought, well, the whole interview I enjoyed, but I thought her questions were a little, like, she was too rapid fire. Also, she's revealing a lot about herself in the interviews, which is fine, but then once you talk to the 10th or 12th person that's sort of similar, you're telling the same stories over and over again. Like, I'm a huge Conan fan. I think Conan is, one of the best. But if you're a fan of Conan and you watch all the time, he retells a lot of the same stories, for people, I guess, that don't watch all the time. But I don't want her to, seep into that, because I don't know a ton about her personal life. So it's cool that she can reveal things like that. She was talking with Dwayne Johnson about how poor she was growing up, and I thought that was really cool. And then, with her mom, she was talking about being a music teacher and all that. So, I think the show is rough around the edges. And one thing I hate, and it's not this show's fault, it's not Kelly's fault, this is every talk show ever, when they do the previews to the show, they're like, oh, today on Kelly, or today on Ellen, or whatever it is, or today with, Kelly and Ryan Seacrest, Kelly Ripa, they give, well, of course that's live, so they don't really do that, but with all these other ones, they give away, like, some of the best lines. The Rock's talking about Kevin Hart being harnessed in his car seat, and the pediatrician looked at him. It's like, those are good lines, but they reveal them in the intro. And same with Ellen. It would have been cool if they just put a question mark over Ellen's face and, like, blocked it out, and Kelly gets a special guest today. Cool. But of course they didn't do that. Today Ellen stops by the Kelly Clarkson show. All right, I get it. You got to promote the show. But I'm the kind of person who doesn't even watch not movie reviews, but movie trailers, because I don't want to be spoiled. So for me, it's like, reveal as little as possible, to still keep the audience interested. But I know that's a talk show thing. They've been doing it since, Phil Donahue probably, and before. So I get it. That's fine. Not personally my taste, but so I do like the show. I think it's got potential. I don't really watch daytime talk shows. I spend most of my TV watching time catching up on other shows that I'm behind on. But like, I love Ellen, but I don't watch her show. On occasion, if there's a guest I like, I'll catch a clip on YouTube or whatever. But I just don't really watch a lot of daytime television in general. Sometimes I'll watch game shows, but even that is a little sporadic. But, so will I watch Kelly Clarkson regularly? No, I won't. But I wanted to at least watch the first couple episodes so I could review it for you guys, let you know what I think. I'll probably check in now and then on it, like I do with Ellen, if there's a guest that I really like, or that I know Kelly's, buddies with, and I'm like, oh, this will be such a cool interview, whatever. Um, and I might check every so often to see, like, oh, what songs has she been covering at the top of the show. Um, so yes, I'm not going to really watch it on the regular, or probably very much at all, but I do enjoy it. I think it has potential. Her likability is infectious. I mean, she's always smiling and laughing, and you can tell she's just genuinely an upbeat, optimistic, happy person. I feel like, I'm the same way. At least I try to be. So I like that. But I'm going to give the Kelly Clarkson show a B plus. I definitely think there's a little room for improvement, but I think for somebody who's never had a talk show before, I think it's a great start, and it'll be interesting to see if it's on in 17 years like Ellen. We'll see. All right, so up next is a very Brady renovation. Now, like I said at the top of this show, I think. I mean, one of my good friends watches HGTV all the time, so it's been on, like, in the house when I've been over, and so I've caught, like, a couple of shows here or there. I know I've seen Flip or Flop at least once, and I think I've seen the Property Brothers once or twice maybe as well. But, like, I'm not really into that whole thing. I don't even have cable, so I don't even have HGTV. So, that kind of stuff, like home renovations, even like the buying it, like the $1 million home shows or whatever, it just doesn't really interest me, to be honest. But the Brady Bunch was my absolute favorite show when I was a little kid. I mean, it was Brady Bunch and Scooby Doo. They ran every afternoon, and I just was hooked. I played the Brady Bunch. I have a cassette tape, and I know exactly where it is too, of me and my one brother playing the Brady Bunch. I was Jan. Big shock. I was a middle child, and unbeknownst to me at the time, gay. So why not be Jan, right? So I sort of look back at that time and was like, man, why didn't I know when I was 4? Because I was Jan in our playtime. But my brother was, I believe, Greg, which makes sense because he was my older brother. And then my mother was cooking at the time on this tape we have in our little scenario, but she played Alice, and so we would go in the kitchen and, oh, what are you cooking, Alice, or whatever. So I mean, Brady Bunch is like ingrained in my DNA. So when I heard a couple of years ago that HGTV bought the Brady Bunch house that was up for sale, the one they used for the exterior shots of the show, I thought, well, this might be interesting, whatever, and then I kind of totally forgot about it. And then when I was prepping for this news and reviews show on my channel, I had noticed that it just premiered this week, so I was like, you know what, I'm going to watch this Renovation show and see if it's any good. And I gotta be honest, it was really cool. I was getting into it. I don't know how many episodes they're going to be. I think there's maybe 5 or 6, because they're going to make each room of the house a different episode. And the first one was a 90-minute special, because of course they have to introduce everything, and they have to, explain what they're going to be doing for the series, and this and that and the other thing. And there's a couple of cool things with it. First of all, there's a bunch of different HGTV personalities that are working on the show. I knew the Property Brothers. I knew Laura Spencer, but I knew her from Good Morning America, not from anything on HGTV, but I guess she has a show on there too. And then there's a bunch of other people I don't really know. I think Goodbyes maybe is one of the show, like Buys. I don't know. Anyway, the Property Brothers were really at the center of this episode. Basically, each different HGTV host is going to do a separate house, or separate room in the house. So, essentially, they bought this, HGTV bought the house from whoever had owned it since the early 70s, when the show was still on, or maybe had just ended or something. And so it had been in their possession for 40-some years. And they sold it, and HGTV bought it. But the problem is, so basically they were going to renovate it to make the inside look like the Brady house, because, of course, the Brady Bunch show was shot on a set at Paramount. It was not shot inside this person's house. So the outside was the outside that we saw on TV, but the inside didn't exist, and realistically couldn't exist in that house the way it was. First of all, there's not even a second floor on this house. Like, it's funny, and they sort of poked fun at this in the Brady Bunch movie in the 90s, which, by the way, is a great, great parody movie. It's like a parody movie that's spot on, but it's also a loving homage to the show. So I highly recommend the Brady Bunch movie from, I believe it's 1995. But aside from that, they sort of poke fun at, like, well, how could this house even really exist? Like, inside it doesn't make any sense from the outside. And so that's sort of what they discovered. Like, there's no second floor to this house. The set at Paramount had twice as much space as the actual house. So, HGTV has this sort of task ahead of them of, okay, we're going to have to basically build out the back, because apparently it has a huge backyard, which is good. So they're going to build out the back to make it have more levels, but they can't disrupt the look of the front of the house. So how are they going to do that? Oh, well, they're going to lower the living room, and they're going to do this and that. But the cool thing about it, other than all of that, is that all 6 Brady kids, the actors that played the Brady kids, are involved, and not just like, showing up and looking at the house, oh, this is so cool, but actually, like, involved. Like, Maureen McCormick, was helping with, the stones next to the front door. And Christopher Knight, who played Peter, was helping 3D model a horse that was in the living room, because they had the right horse, but it didn't have enough. One leg was off or whatever, so he had to 3D model that, and Christopher Knight was looking at paint samples for the front of the house. So it was really cool to see, everybody, and all 6 kids really are, involved in one way or another, and I'm sure will be more involved, when they get to, like, the kids' specific rooms, or Greg's, attic, which apparently they're going to put in the basement, because obviously they can't have an attic on a house that doesn't even have a second story. But it was very cool. I have to say, I got very involved in it. Now, will I see this through? I don't know that I'll watch all of these. I might watch the last episode to just see how it went, what the finished product looks like. But they had, like, Brady trivia questions, pop up on your screen. Not too often, like, not every minute or whatever. Like, it wasn't like pop-up Brady's. But there were a couple throughout the day, or throughout the episode. But it was cool to see the kids grown up, and we of course have seen some of them through the years. Christopher Knight had his own reality show with Adrian Curry years and years ago. And we've seen the kids pop up on different things and different reunions and whatever. But it's always cool to see them together, and it's cool to hear them talk about memories of the show. There was a big hubbub about finding the right chairs for the dining room, and so Maureen McCormick and I think it was Eve Plum, went and looked at or maybe it was Susan Olsen, but two of the girls, went to this antique shop and looked at this old furniture, and were like, yep, this is it. It was the 83rd, place that the set designer had looked at, and so it was interesting. And as a huge Brady Bunch fan, I honestly got a little teary-eyed, to be honest, when they were sort of admiring everything and going over, oh yeah, this was this, and they did this, and they would show, like, obviously the side by side, here's what it looked like on the show, and here's how we made it look, and yeah, it was really, really cool. So for somebody that, I used to watch, like, Survivor a lot. I used to watch Amazing Race sometimes. I used to love American Idol. But I don't really do a lot of reality anymore. I do like America's Got Talent, and that's pretty much, and Shark Tank, I guess, if that counts. But, I never do any of these, like, property shows or home makeover shows. I have no interest, but it was honestly pretty cool. I don't feel like at all I wasted the hour and a half it took to watch it. So I'm going to give a very Brady Renovation an A-. Like I said, I've got enough TV on my plate to last me a while, so I don't think I'll probably watch the others And if I do, it wouldn't be, right away. But certainly I'll probably check in on the last episode and see how it went. So yeah, it's very cool. Especially if you're not a fan, maybe you wouldn't get much out of it. But as a huge Brady Bunch fan, it was very meaningful to me. To kind of see them sort of recreate all of this stuff. So, okay. So before I get to Dave Chappelle and his stand-up special, I did watch the pilot episode as well of Good Talk with Anthony Jeselnik. This is another new talk show. It's a weekly one on Comedy Central, and it's Friday nights at 11, which is, they do the Daily Show Monday through Thursday, but then Friday night has always just sort of been like, oh, whatever, we'll rerun another movie, whatever. But now it's a talk show, Good Talk, with Anthony Jeselnik, and I watched the first episode of that, and I think I want to watch the second before I sort of make a judgment. Nick Kroll was the guest on the first episode. Certainly have some thoughts about that and how it went, but I want to see if each episode is the same, because him and Nick Kroll are like buddies. So I don't know how much that colored it, you know what I mean? So the second episode, I think, is David Spade, I read, or maybe that's the third episode. But anyway, I'm going to watch another episode of that before I really give you guys an opinion on it. But yeah, so that's another new talk show. By the way, there's a bunch, every year there's so many new talk shows. When I first got to college was the era of, all day was talk shows. Because they didn't have any daytime game shows except Price is Right at the time. So if it wasn't a soap opera, it was a talk show. So it was like, Tempest Bledsoe, Mark Wahlberg, but not like Marky Mark, this other guy, Mark Wahlberg. And then, of course, like Sally Jesse Raphael was still on and all that. So, Ricky Lake. And I watched all of that because when you're a freshman in college and you haven't made a lot of friends yet and you don't have a job because you're focusing on school for the first semester, you just sit in your room and watch TV a lot. So I watched all those talk shows. So so there's a bunch of new ones. Jerry Springer apparently has a judge show where he sees cases, and he's not a real judge, but whatever. I don't know how that's going to work. I tried to find an episode of that for you guys so I could review it, but I honestly couldn't find one, and I couldn't even find online if it's on in my area or not. There's no direct website for the Judge Jerry show, and I don't know, the TV Guide website wasn't really working today or something. So I'm sorry. I am interested to see how that works since he's not a real judge, but whatever. Judge Judy's always my judge anyway, so we can leave it at that. But okay, so let's get to this Dave Chappelle special. Now this is one of his Netflix original stand-up specials. It's called Sticks and Stones. He's done a few of these already, and I think there's still at least 2 more to come in his contract. But the reason I wanted to do this is because there's just been so much talk and controversy surrounding this special that I had to see it for myself so I could weigh in, just because I try not to be like, oh yeah, that sucks, without ever having seen it, or oh yeah, that's awesome. No, watch it and then have an informed opinion. Don't just read, hey, don't watch Dave Chappelle's special. So I did watch it, and it's interesting, I'll say that. I totally see where people are coming from, that they, think it's terrible, and he's, saying things and, broaching topics that he shouldn't be talking about, and he sounds like a cranky old man, and, that's a lot of the sort of, blips that I read before I watched it. And I have to say that some of that seems correct. I do think he seems a bit like grumpy old man. I don't like newfangled things. I'm out of touch. Get off my lawn. I do think there's some of that in the special, but I think, look, I've been a Dave Chappelle fan for a long time, since Chappelle's show and before. Some of his stand-up before he was even on Chappelle's show. I've always been a fan of his, but has he always, hit the mark? I don't think so. But he has a lot. And, here's the thing. He's always been about controversy. He's always, he's never shied away from controversial topics. I mean, the very first episode of Chappelle's show has that famous, Clayton Grigsby, KKK, blind guy sketch that is, I mean, it's one of the best sketches that's ever been on television. You put that up there with the best of SNL or the best of, Monty Python or, whoever, whatever you want to say, Mad TV, whatever. But, I mean, it stands among one of the greatest sketches. So, and that was very controversial. I mean, he was using the N-word constantly, and he was, it was about the KKK, and it was, so let's be clear. I mean, the guy has never shied away from controversial subjects. And some of the subjects in this special he has broached before, like R. Kelly, for example. But I think, so basically, if you haven't seen it, some of the subjects broached include, Michael Jackson molesting the children, from, like, they did the HBO Finding Neverland documentary, or whatever it was called, Losing Neverland, or I forget what it was called, but I didn't watch that, but Finding Neverland was the Johnny Depp movie, I believe. But anyway, and then that segues sort of into R. Kelly, and then there's a lot of stuff about the Me Too movement, and he talks about Louis C.K., and he talks about Kevin Hart and the gay stuff from the Oscars, and, and then there's a big part in the middle about LGBTQ, and specifically with transgender people, and so, it's almost like, controversy from the word go. It's like every kind of subject that he tackles is kind of that nature, But so here's how I felt about it. I thought, on the whole, it was very uneven. Did I think he was saying and doing things that maybe, crossed the line, or maybe, he shouldn't have said? I'm never one to say, oh, well, he shouldn't have said that, or that's, if you're a stand-up comedian, I feel like that's, not necessarily part of the job, because there's a ton of comedians that don't do controversial stuff, Gary Goldman, Tig Notaro, Jerry Seinfeld, very famously. But, if you are an envelope-pushing comic, then that is sort of your deal. But I feel like the problem with this special wasn't even so much the subject matter. It was that he just didn't write a lot of good jokes for it. I think he felt that, oh, well, I'm Dave Chappelle. I can just go up there and say, oh, well, this is crazy, or this is this, and get some laughs. And I think parts of it just didn't work that way. I did not find some of it to be funny because it wasn't well written, not because it was controversial, not because, oh, you can't say that or whatever. Some of it was offensive, but again, this is an envelope-pushing comedian. I don't think he cares about offending people. But, I think the problem is the whole chunk in the middle with the transgender stuff, I didn't find funny, not because it was transgender stuff and I'm gay, like, it had nothing to do with that. It was more just like he didn't really write any good jokes. I mean, one of the best jokes he has in that segment, he ruins with an incredibly racist Asian impression. And then he, like, backs it up by saying, oh, yeah, my wife's Asian, but she hates that impression too, whatever. And what I thought was interesting was going into the special knowing that critics didn't like it. And let's be clear, this is one of those cases where, like, on Rotten Tomatoes it has, I believe last time I looked at it, a 23%. But then the audience votes was like 99% or 98%. I think it was 99. So obviously, like, if you like this special, you probably will love it. If you're of that mindset, great, you'll love it. But, there were a lot of jokes that just fell flat, or like were sort of half-formed. But in that transgender segment specifically, there wasn't a lot of laughter even from the audience in the arena, you know? So I thought that was weird. Some of the stuff, like the beginning of the special was like more the Michael Jackson stuff. The end of the special was more like the Kevin Hart, Me Too, Louis C.K. kind of stuff. And I thought both of those segments had some jokes that I laughed at. Some of them, and his delivery was pretty much on for those. But it felt like the jokes just hadn't quite been workshopped enough. And Netflix wanted a special, so Dave was like, okay, here you go, here's the special. I don't know, it just, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he was very satisfied with how all the jokes played out, but the audience response, even in the arena, did not seem to indicate that this was a rip-roaring, hilarious stand-up routine. And by comparison, like, he hosted Saturday Night Live the week of the Donald Trump election. And he gave this blisteringly funny monologue. Usually when they have a stand-up on, they just give a monologue of their stand-up. And, I think Lauren pretty much is just like, okay, just do your stand-up routine, whatever. Whatever you want to say, you can say. And I think it went like 12 or 13 minutes. It was a long monologue, but it's Dave Chappelle, and, he can do it. I would say I probably laughed more in that 12 or 13 minute routine, in the monologue, maybe than I did the entire hour-long special. Maybe not. Maybe I laughed a couple more times in the special, but I don't know. I mean, I've gone back and watched that routine probably 10 times over the last couple of years. It's hilarious. And John Mulaney is another one. I've watched his opening monologue routine from the first time he hosted probably 10 or 12 times. I thought Chappelle's monologue on SNL was tight. Obviously, you're going to pick your best material, but it was at a very controversial time. I mean, Donald Trump had just been elected, and here he was in the monologue literally saying, let's give him a chance. And certainly in some circles, that is very controversial, especially on SNL when they're making fun of him every week, with Alec Baldwin and everything. But I just didn't find a lot of the material here in the stand-up special, Sticks and Stones, to be that funny. I don't think he wrote good enough material. If you want to make fun of, the Me Too movement or something, and talk about snowflakes or whatever, I'm sure there's ways to do it with better punchlines, and I didn't think they were here. So, is the special worth watching? Absolutely. I encourage everybody to watch it, because I've had conversations with several people where they're just like, oh my god, everybody's ragging on Dave Chappelle in that special, and I don't get it, I don't see the problem. But then I'll say, oh, okay, well, what did you think of it? Oh, I didn't watch it. Okay, so I urge everybody to watch it, just because I like the discussion about it. And I'm not saying it was bad, because I definitely did laugh. A couple of the Michael Jackson jokes were hilarious. And, they were jokes about, let's face it, they were jokes about rape. And I thought the punchlines were there, and it was, because it was his spin on it. And it fell apart, though, in most of the special. Like, most of the special just didn't have that kind of punch. If you're going to tackle controversial subjects, that's fine, but be funny, and this just, for the most part, wasn't. But I did laugh, certainly, sometimes. But yeah, so that's sort of my take on the Chappelle thing. I implore you to watch the special if you haven't, just to get your own take on it. I mean, if you're not a fan of Dave Chappelle, and if you're not a fan of controversial comics, then okay, you can probably bow out anyway. You probably won't like it at all. But, I don't know. I guess I should give it a grade. I sort of teeter here, but I'll give it a C+. I do think it's worth seeing. I think it's fairly average. Certainly for a Dave Chappelle special, it's average. But I think there's definitely merit to some of the jokes, but there's a lot of merit to some of the controversy too, because it's just, it is so far from what I expect from a Dave Chappelle special. I expect the controversial topics, but I expect them to be funny. I expect his stories to be told in a funny way. Um, I thought this was a lot of like half-baked ideas. Oh, no pun intended. He was in the movie Half Baked. But yeah, like half-baked ideas and half-baked jokes. So that's sort of my take on that. So, okay, well, that is it for this episode of TV News and Reviews with Dan. I don't really have a catchy name for it yet. But maybe that'll stick. I don't know. I would like to do it every week. I'll certainly be doing it every week in the fall as new fall TV shows come out. And Netflix seems to be releasing a show every week, so I'd like to hit some of those too. There's one called The Spy that just came out with Sacha Baron Cohen that sounded interesting. It's just a 6-episode, like, limited series kind of thing. So it won't be back for a second season or anything, but that sounded kind of interesting. So I'd like to tackle some of that stuff. And like I said, once Disney Plus goes up, I'll be looking at some of that stuff as well. But I'll be back soon, I guess, with The Conners. I'm not sure when that premieres, but I think in just a couple of weeks we'll have the season premiere of that show. And then, of course, Dan does Disney and Food Fanatics. Joe and I did another Lay's potato chip taste test recently that I'll be putting up. So that's coming up. Yeah, who knows? Frasier Fridays, of course. I'd like to tackle so many topics, but there's so little time. So we'll see what I get to. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Check out, my channel and all the videos that are already on there. And do check out the Dave Chappelle Sticks and Stones special. I would be very curious to hear your take in the comments. Maybe you loved it. I know, a lot of people did, and a lot of people, hated it. I don't know. I'm certainly somewhere in the middle. But yeah, comment with what you thought. Comment about the Brady Bunch renovation show if you'd like, because I was very shocked about how much I liked that. But anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.